G'day. Now, I've put up a series of videos about meditation and I reviewed them, and it occurs to me that they're a bit disjointed and perhaps I've not made myself very clear. So I'm going to put it all together in this one video and cover the topic of meditation as I understand it and as I'm presenting it in one overview. So the definition that I'm working to is that meditation is profound rest. Now, profound rest is a state in which there is no inner disturbance. And it's what I'm calling the natural state, the undisturbed state. That the whole purpose of meditation, as I'm presenting it, is to find within yourself that undisturbed state. The way you do that is by understanding the role that the emotions play in your psyche. There's a quote from the Sankhya Yoga Pravakana. Experience ends in thought. Now, this is a simple statement, but it's profound. The bridge between thought and experience are your emotions, how you feel, our feeling state, how experience makes us feel, whether it's an emotion or a feeling. That's our primary contact with reality. And the role of the emotions is to inform the intellect. You experience, you feel, you think. And where people uh, get into trouble with their emotions is when there's been some kind of emotional disturbance in their life. And that's just about everybody. The most common experience is some kind of emotional betrayal early in life. A significant other does something which is deeply distressing to a young child. Now, that takes all kinds of forms. So that leads to long held inattention. And especially when it occurs early in life, you grow up with that tension, you habituate to it, and you become quite unconscious of it. However, it does condition your thoughts, your experience, your outlook on life, and is an ongoing proverbial thorn in the side. Now, there's a lot of psychological theories and practices and remedies and therapies designed to help people understand themselves better and deal with these inner turmoils. Now, in meditation, there's a stage, an early stage, where these things come to the conscious awareness. And once they do, they can be identified and understood. And it's in the understanding of them that their adverse effect on your psyche, your mind, your experience fades. Meditation is about more things than that, and I'm going to discuss that later. The bottom line, though, is to bring these things to conscious awareness. There's a couple of ways of doing that, and finding body tension is perhaps the easiest way, because that's what you're left with in the body, tensions. It shows in the way you hold yourself, your posture, uh, stress, tiredness, perhaps, a number of ways. Now, there's a natural healing process. The mind and the body, the organism, always seeks a balanced, pleasant condition. And there are natural mechanisms which just allow this. Time. Time heals a great deal. Now, a genuine meditation practice uses that natural healing mechanism and encourages it. A lot of coping strategies which people employ instead tend to be band-aids over these problems and offer relief but don't resolve things. In worst cases, people resort to alcohol or drugs or some kind of obsessive behaviour uh, as a compensatory mechanism. Now, the early stages of meditation are the most difficult for most people because that's when these interior conflicts, which are like icebergs under the water, become more and more consciously visible. So the initial period of practicing meditation can actually seem more distressing, but it's the path to mental health and mental well-being, bringing them to the surface and dealing with them. There's a misconception that practicing meditation is leads to bliss, finding happiness. Now, that's both true and not true. It's true in that the undisturbed state is intrinsically agreeable, pleasant. It's not true that sitting in some formal posture uh, is an escape from all the miseries of life and you find a happy state. Genuine happiness, genuine peace of mind is accurately defined as the absence of conflict, absence of pain, absence of distress. Quite often, understanding yourself is only a matter of seeing how things are connected. And when you see and understanding, when you comprehend how things are connected, the distress tends to resolve. A lot of the distress is in fighting with yourself, trying to keep these things repressed. And while you do that, that's the essence of being distressed. Now, a few things to discuss that I haven't discussed in previous videos. Dreams. If you start to meditate and you do it on a regular basis, it's quite possible that your dreams become more vivid. And sometimes those dreams can be very, uh, they can have a big influence on you. There's a couple of ways to look at dreams. Dreams can be thought of as a different way of thinking to yourself. Dreams tend to bring up unconscious material to the conscious awareness in symbolic form. And there are dreams which are sometimes inexplicable, very vivid. When a person starts to meditate, no one starts in a vacuum, a psychic vacuum. We've all been born into a culture. We've all had some kind of religious ideas impressed upon us. We've got social ideas enforced upon us. We've got cultural pressures, family pressures, peer group pressures. All these things are influences. Some of them good, some of them not. Some of them confusing, some of them not. We don't start with a clean slate. We start with a well and truly confusing slate. And seeing what has influenced you in life is all part and parcel of self-awareness. We're all conditioned by our culture and our environment. And a lot of it is inaccurate. We're encouraged to believe things, and often we discover what we believe isn't true. Well, that's delusion. We can be deluded by our beliefs, or we can suffer self-delusion. We easily apply interpretations to our experience. We're quick to do that. We're quick to make a narrative. We're quick to find explanations. And we're tempted to believe these things. Once you get past the therapeutic stage of meditation, once you start to unravel some of the emotional conflict, you also start to notice some of your own delusions. And this can be a little bit confronting because we have our beliefs, our model of the world. It's what we take to be true. And that can be difficult too. There are also a range of very strange experiences which can occur depending on how dedicated you practice. And these are confusing sometimes, especially if you're practicing meditation in the context of one of these uh, traditions, which will have already conditioned you to interpret your experiences as confirming their beliefs. And that's a confusing thing. One of the terms that are thrown around at the moment is jhanas, or this is a Buddhist term, various bliss states or very concentrated states, which um, can vary in intensity. Um, and the experiences can be quite bizarre. People interpret these things as confirmation that they're on some kind of path that leads somewhere. Well, basically, perhaps take my word for it, they're just experiences. Um, there are a lot of people on the internet making all kinds of claims about themselves. The claims that are being put around these days, people are genuinely saying they're enlightened. Uh, if they're cute about it, they say they're awakened. they talk about, oh, they've had their Kundalini arise. Now, I've been very hesitant to talk about that because I don't want to be associated with these frauds. But there is such a thing as Kundalini. Uh, it's something which can happen. It will happen with a mind which is serene and a body that's energized. And most of these techniques that produce the Kundalini arising, accompanied by deep breathing exercises, it's debatable whether it actually means anything, though. They're very unusual experiences, but there's a whole lot of interpretations applied to these things, which it's doubtful that any of those interpretations are true. Another topic that needs a bit of discussion is hallucination. Now, I recommend that if you've got the time and the inclination, look at some of the videos where Oliver Sacks, who died only a few years ago, he studied hallucination most of his life. He knows a lot about it. And there are a lot of conditions which are not that uncommon where people hallucinate. Now, with meditation practice, occasionally you hallucinate. Now, there's a problem with hallucination, and that is it's not like a dream state. A hallucination is like reality, except it's your mind has created it. And it can be very confusing when you hallucinate. You can imagine all kinds of things, especially if you've been influenced by some extreme philosophy or religion to believe that these hallucinations indicate something. The mind's a tricky thing, and hallucination is something to be aware of. There's a philosophical basis to the approach of meditation that I'm offering. Now, I don't want to bring any traditional philosophy into this, but I'm influenced by this, and I think it's fair to tell you why I'm offering meditation the way I am. The Hindu formulation is Sat, Chit, Anand. Now, Sat, a Sanskrit term, Sat is being, Chit is mind, and Anand is bliss. Now, what that statement is asserting is that that is the fundamental condition of being alive, that the natural state is intrinsically contentment, bliss, pleasantness, undisturbed. And that's the philosophical basis of this technique, that there is a natural state to be found. The Hindu formulation of happiness isn't a positive thing where you go out and get some happiness. It's the absence of pain. You get rid of all of the internal conflicts, and what you're left with is the abiding internal state. Now, there's a parallel view, but a little bit different in Taoism. In the Tao Te Ching, you'll find a little saying that the sage attempts to return to the state of the uncarved block of wood. So this is a picturesque way of saying that a carved block of wood is a conditioned thing. it's become finite in what it can be. Block of wood in the uncarved state is one of infinite possibility. Before it's taken shape, before it's been formalized into an end thing. Now, there's a bit of a recognition there that we are conditioned beings. We're conditioned by our culture, by where we live, when we live, what language you speak, who we know, what influenced us. But underneath that, before we were conditioned, we were unconditioned. And that's something that the Taoists advocated, that as a fully formed individual, it's possible to return to that unconditioned state. And once again, that's a parallel view to the Satchitanand. Now, that's the philosophical basis for this whole approach. Now, the technique, I've attempted to make it as simple as possible so it's as accessible to anybody. And it's actually quite difficult to do because it's so simple. It's close your eyes, relax, and stay awake. Couldn't be simpler, but it's not easy to do. Much easier if somebody gives you a task to do. And that's many of the techniques, one-pointed techniques, where there's a specified task. Now, although it's simple, this is meditation. It's allowing. And you're just allowing whatever is in your mind to be there. And the awake part is to be alert to it. And just to become familiar. Pay attention to it. Let it happen. And why it works is because there's a natural mechanism, internal mechanism. As I said at the beginning of this video, we automatically tend to a balanced, calm state. That's where we tend to go, where the body and the mind gravitates to. It's being diverted away from that natural state is where all the problems are. And the struggle to suppress emotional conflicts is where the pain is, where the emotional distress is. Over time, we sort ourselves out whether we meditate or not, to some degree, because that's the natural thing to do. With meditation, all that you're really doing is actively doing that, consciously doing that, and observing where you're engaging in internal conflict. And the easiest way to find that internal conflict is to notice the tension that's in the body. This technique, when you practice it, gradually it brings the unconscious awareness, unconscious internal condition to conscious awareness. You bring your subconscious into conscious awareness. And I think that's the very definition of self-awareness. Nothing is hidden from you internally. That's meditation. Now, the long-term outcome is very straightforward. You're practicing to be relaxed and you're practicing to be alert. That just becomes your habit. Over time, you naturally are relaxed and alert because that's what you're practicing. It becomes the habit, the abiding state. And in the technique where you're closing your eyes, where you're maximizing the internal experience, well, you are more and more competent in just noticing your internal experience in everything you do. And no effort involved, no struggle involved, no forcing involved. So hopefully that gives a meaningful overview for what I'm proposing here. It's very simple, but it's a slow technique, but it's profound. The absence of internal conflict, bringing to the conscious awareness the subconscious, leads to profound rest, finding the undisturbed state, and that's meditation. So, see you later.